Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. Hey, we've got a really good and I hope quite helpful show for you today. Second hour, we'll do Ask Me Anything with Tim Staples. And of course, that's always a good and helpful show. But you may have noticed that in the news, there has been a lot of talk of in vitro fertilization and of various people confessing their love for in vitro fertilization and their support for in vitro fertilization. And it's almost a litmus test of do you support it or not? And we don't want to have a political conversation about that. We are not interested in that. But it is, because this is so much in the news, it is an opportunity to talk about particularly the Catholic view of in vitro fertilization, take questions about the ethics of in vitro fertilization, and maybe help to open some minds to why the Church opposes what so many in the political and academic and media spheres seem to be supporting at this moment in the life of our society. If you want to get in on that conversation, we would love to have you get in on that conversation. You don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to agree with us. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to know anything about in vitro fertilization, or you can know a lot about in vitro fertilization. Whatever, you are welcome here. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. As a matter of fact, I would say that many people probably are of a mind to say, why would anyone oppose in vitro fertilization? So from the National Catholic Bioethics Center, a very good friend of this apostolate and a man who has been a great help to many in thinking through bioethical issues, Father Tad Pacholczyk. Father, thanks very much for being here with us.
Well, thanks, Cy. Great to be able to join you.
Now, first of all, I don't always get it right. Did I make any mistakes there in the opening? Did I?
No, you sounded spot on to me.
Okay, all right, good. Because I don't like to start off with well, let me clarify something that you said, because the very fine distinctions are necessary when we're talking about bioethics. We're talking about things that require a great deal of clarity, and so I don't always trust myself to make those fine distinctions. So maybe you could make some of those distinctions for us, Father. If you could kind of give us the introduction. Here's what Catholics think, and here's how Catholics think about in vitro fertilization.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, and I mean, in part because of what President Trump just did. I think it's worth mentioning that he has set up a review process, and in that review process, he's looking to promote in vitro fertilization. And he basically said, we want to use it because we believe in the importance of family formation. And of course, that's a very good thing. I think we as Catholics obviously share that value. And he said we want to eliminate financial barriers because it's so expensive to do it, which is also true that it is expensive. But the question about eliminating financial barriers immediately brings up your question, like, oh, wait a second, should we be pushing this? Should we be promoting this? Or is it perhaps the case that we're stepping into a paradigm of cooperation in evil if we actually do this? And at the end of the day, I'm afraid that's exactly what we would be doing. That's exactly what the administration would be doing if, in fact, after this review process, decisions are made to promote and fund and encourage the practice of in vitro fertilization. So why do I say that? What's the issue here? Well, I think, first of all, you're saying there's some fine distinctions, some subtle distinctions. And I think that's right. When you ask your typical Catholic, what's the issue? What's the hang up with in vitro fertilization? The response that you get is, oh, well, you make extra embryos. And so it's wrong for that reason, because some of those embryos, they get stuck in the freezer, they get thrown down the sink, they get handed over to embryonic stem cell researchers who destroy them for their cells, that kind of thing. Now, that's certainly a very, very grave moral concern. But it turns out that that whole concern around the embryos is a form of collateral damage, really. It's not sort of the core issue about the objectionability of in vitro fertilization. And I think, to think about that, I, I think most parents have a sense or awareness that in the marital act, they give each other the gift of life. And then if you just pause and think about that, you say, well, wait a minute, is it really even possible for one person to actually confer the full gift of life onto another? And so I think when it's the case that parents sense what their children are, how they are in their fundamental integrity, they'll say, no, no, the gift here is bigger than anything that I have done.
Yes.
So, the child exceeds any possibility of me giving that gift of life. And I think that's an important insight, because what does that do? That enables us to say, well, there is some kind of mystery here. Human beings are so grand, so great, so deep, that it's not the kind of thing that they should be turned into uh, objects for manipulation. They shouldn't be entities that are sold. Uh, this is, I think, the key insight, that there's an inherent respect that is due to our children, and that respect is founded in the very nature of what it is to be a human being. And in the way that we hand on life, it has to be an act of pure reception, that we receive that gift. And it's not something that we're entitled to. It's not something we can purchase. It's not something we go down to the clinic and we should be able to demand it as if it were a right, because life is not a right. It's purely a gift and a mystery in that way. So I start off with that just to frame it. And then, to say, look, everything is about context here at the end of the day. Context matters. And what we mean by that is that each of us are entitled to come into the world through an act of marital intimacy, an act of love between our parents, our mom and our dad. And that in that body-to-body self-giving, that flesh-to-flesh, the new flesh of a new life is engendered. And this is a beautiful, sacred reality that we cannot hand over to entrepreneurs or to clinics that are set up to manhandle sex cells and treat the production of the next generation of humanity as if it were, a mixing together of parts and pieces on their part in order to create that new life. So that's really the kind of key insight, I think, that we deserve to be loved into being.
So if you say that the child has a right to be created in the way that we all of us were created, like that just because there's a technology that can do it a new way doesn't mean that is should be done. Is it going too far to say that in vitro fertilization is a violation of the rights of the child?
It is. In the final analysis, that's exactly correct. It is a violation of the rights of the child. The child has the right to be engendered in a certain way, simply out of respect for his nature or her nature. That's the kind of beings we are. And there's a sense, again, in which to receive the gift from God there's a pure gratuitousness to it. But when we say gift, we mean gratuitousness, and it's not something that we can turn into a right on our part as parents. So parents make this mistake sometimes. They say, well, when we got married, we have a right to a child. Well, no, this is more subtle. When you got married, you have a right to the acts that are ordered and disposed, to the handing on of the gift of life. But you're not entitled to life itself. You have no rights over that you can lay claim to, as if it were a piece of property, as if the human being were something that you could claim in that fashion.
I think for many people, it's hard, though, to to see this, like to see like, well, if the child is born and the child is loved and the child is beautiful, in what way were the child's rights violated? Do you see what I'm saying, Father? Like there's not a, like if I see someone with a scar on them who's been assaulted, I go, okay, I can see how their rights were violated. Somebody's money was taken. I can see how their rights were violated. I can't see that when I look at the child.
I think you're right. And that's sort of the prima facie reaction that I think a lot of people have, the first sort of assessment of it. And you do have to go a little deeper. And so just to give you an example of where I think we should look at some of that rights of the child being taken away, the way IVF is done, you typically produce multiple embryos to start with, meaning, as many eggs as you can get. If you can get 10 or a dozen or 15, then you fertilize all of them with sperm and you generate a lot of human beings. And then you implant a number of them. So let's say you implant 5 of them and just one takes. Now, already there's a question here. Look, each one of those embryos were objectively brothers and sisters to each other. And by our going in and manhandling and manipulating them, and then causing through our actions the demise, the loss of 4 of them, the one that survived, the rights of that one to respect towards their brothers and sisters was violated objectively. And, the other ones that were still out on the lab bench in the Petri dish that got poured down the sink after the process was done, this goes even further to remind us of how the rights of that one baby who makes it through runs the gauntlet and survives, already you can see a violation and a number of violations that have occurred along the way. Now, the other piece here to think about that I think can be helpful is that when we do IVF, we are really manhandling and manipulating these embryos. We're grading them, we're keeping them in unnatural environments, we're keeping them in tissue culture medium, which is not their natural milieu. And at the end of the day, then when these embryos do successfully implant and grow up, the rate of birth defects is twice the level for a normally conceived child. And so again, you can say, well, so why did we impose this onto a child by the way we brought him or her into the world? Some additional birth defect, like having part of the stomach born outside the gut space. This happens, with a certain frequency with IVF babies, and they have to be surgically, sewn back up, as it were. And that's another injustice, to start out on a process that is ordered only really to the satisfaction of parental desires, even if it means that the rights of the child are sidelined or abrogated in important ways. So I hear what you're saying. It's not easy to see it on first glance. You got to think through the process a little bit. And everybody's like, well, we want babies. Babies are good, and they're so beautiful once they're born. And can't we all just rejoice about this and kind of quickly push the other stuff under the rug and pretend it didn't happen? But that's exactly where the church says, no, we have to look at this in its fullness and be honest here that this is something that does involve some significant violations and grave objections from start to finish.
Father Tad Pacholczyk is our guest from the National Catholic Bioethics Center. There are still 3 lines open if you would like to get in on the conversation. We'll get to the calls as they come in, and you can get in that queue. 888-318-7884. In vitro fertilization, very much in the news, and I would say there's a deficit of voices speaking up in defense of the child, in defense of the nature of the Sex Act, in defense of the nature of the parents, and all of that. So we do have an obligation to speak plainly about these things. That's what we're going to try to do today. If you'd like to get involved, again, 888-318-7884.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live. Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Mother Angelica had a simple goal when she began EWTN: to reach the world with the gospel message. EWTN radio services transmit 24/7 on over 500 domestic and international AM and FM radio affiliates, satellite radio, and web streaming. We've never wavered from our mandate to proclaim the truth and majesty of the Catholic faith. Thank you for joining EWTN in this mission.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Tad Pacholczyk is here as our guest. We're talking about in vitro fertilization, much in the news, in part because of the actions of President Trump. There is a very long, strong, and deep tradition of thinking through in vitro fertilization in the Catholic Church. As a matter of fact, I would say it is probably the most rigorous and well-established in the world. And so Father Tad from the National Catholic Bioethics Center here to help us think through it with a Catholic mind, to apply the Catholic mindset to this innovation, I suppose, would be the scientific innovation, and what is in fact an immoral scientific innovation, something that many, many people struggle with. And if you'd like to get in on the conversation about it, if you'd like to ask, if you'd like to challenge Father on this view, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. Lines are filling up, Father. I'm happy to let you to continue to make whatever points you'd like, or we can go to the phones.
Well, let me make maybe just one quick point, because
Okay.
you and I during the break just touched on this,
Yeah.
that I think in looking at what's going on with the administration, I think there are many Catholics and Christians who are very grateful for the very pro-life stances that are being taken up by the administration. And so then when this IVF promotion step occurred, a lot of people kind of scratched their heads. And and the claim was made and is made frequently that this is a pro-life technology, and it engenders new life, etc. And I think it's important to just emphasize, actually, IVF is not pro-life. We talked earlier about the extra embryos and how they're treated, and one can see that that's not pro-life, young humans being destroyed. But the other piece is that when you do have a very successful implantation regimen, and maybe you get 4 embryos that implant into the mother, well, then the doctors will say, gee, this is more than we were hoping for. We're going to have to do a selective reduction. And they go in and destroy 2 of the 4 so that the other 2 have a better chance of surviving. So again, the reality about IVF is that it is a double-edged sword, and you see the death-dealing edge of the sword in these other collateral damages that arise, and also intentional decisions that are made as part and parcel of the process. So just to dispel that myth that it's some, profoundly pro-life technology.
Thank you, Father. Father Tad Pacholczyk, our guest, 888-318-7884. It is the case in American politics, and probably politics of much of the world, that coalitions form and coalitions divide and all that kind of thing. It is simply the case that a Catholic in good conscience can't be part of whatever coalition. It doesn't matter how much we may like them in other ways, involves support for and promotion of in vitro fertilization. That's cooperating with evil in a way that is impermissible. Let's go to the phones now. Michael's in Illinois watching on Twitch. Michael, thanks for getting us started. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Hi. So my question is just with talking with someone who may not be in the Catholic faith, maybe someone in my age group who is permanently infertile. They will at no point in their lifetime be able to ever have children, and having to deal with that. How exactly would I talk to them about that? Because it's a different walk of life that I've never walked, because assuming at this point I can have kids, but also how would I try to understand their viewpoint? Because, again, it's a different walk of life that I've never walked and will never walk, assuming.
Yeah, Michael, great question. I think one of the things you can do in a situation like that is to start off a little bit of a discussion about what is medicine about? What is medicine for? And I think a couple like you're describing who maybe is not Catholic would say, well, look, medicine's giving us this wonderful breakthrough technology that allows us to create embryos and, create children for parents who cannot get pregnant any other way. And so then the question becomes, well, yeah, that is possible, but what does medicine focus on? It focuses on therapies. It focuses on addressing diseases. And it's important to see with great clarity that in vitro fertilization is not a therapy. Because if the couple is infertile and they go and do IVF and pay the $20,000, produce 2 children, let's say, at the end of the process of IVF, they remain exactly as infertile as they were at the beginning of the process. So real medicine would attempt to address the underlying causes of their infertility. And that's something that should be strongly encouraged, and the church encourages it. To the full extent possible, you want to know, why are we infertile? Does the woman have difficulty ovulating? That's one of the most common problems. And if you can address her ability to release an egg, that often will allow for a conception to occur. There's an amalgamation of technologies out there that look at these underlying causes and try to address them. One of them is called NAPRO technology, natural procreative technology. And if you go to naprotechnology.com, you can find more information on that. There's another one called FEMM, and that's FEMM.org. And I forget exactly what that acronym stands for, but they take, very much the same approach. They're based out of New York. And there's 1 or 2 others as well. And that's the kind of direction that we should be encouraging people to think about, because if you can fix the underlying issue and the couple can achieve a pregnancy in the marital embrace, that's what we all want. And many times that, in fact, is possible. But when you have a multi-billion-dollar industry like the IVF industry, and the typical couple arrives to their OBGYN and says, hey, we can't get pregnant. They do a quick workup, and the doctor says, well, look, you want a baby? Just go down the street to their clinic and let them make a baby for you. And that becomes the default position, rather than, doing some hard work here, spending some extra time, and seeing what the underlying cause is. And this is, just to circle back to the Trump administration's decision of a couple of days ago, this is the kind of thing that needs to be vigorously and generously funded. This is where we should be putting our dollars, not into subsidizing a multi-billion-dollar industry like IVF, which is, at its root and core an immoral kind of an industry.
Thank you. All the lines are full, Michael, so I'm going to leave that there and hope that is helpful to you. Karen in Northwest Ohio, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Welcome, Karen. Go ahead with your question.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. This is a little bit not directly on IVF, but, I am opposed to IVF, being a lifelong Catholic. But J.D. Vance, our current vice president, I believe he's Catholic. And has any groups, or like the USCCB, or are there any pro-life groups that would approach or somehow can implore him to speak positively about voting against funding?
Yep. All right, let's see what Father says. I'm sorry, we're just a little... Do you have any sense of that with the vice president, who is a convert to the Catholic faith? Yes.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of Catholics who are I mean, he knows many Catholics. I think it's very likely that he will be approached. And my understanding is maybe that tomorrow morning he's going to be speaking at the prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C., the Catholic prayer breakfast. And so I have no doubt that this very topic will come up. There will be people there who will, ask him further about this a little bit on the side. We all need to do what we can. Those who have access to politicians who are, espousing positions that are not in line with the church, we need to help them out and talk with them.
And this is one we've got to raise our voices on, Karen. So thank you very much for the call and for the question. Our guest is Father Tad Pacholczyk. We're talking about the Catholic view, what Catholics have come to understand about in vitro fertilization. Right back with more calls for Father Tad on Catholic Answers Live. Why do Catholics pray to dead people, bow to statues, venerate relics? And where do we find any of this stuff in the Bible? In the delightful book, The Saints Pray for You, Dr. Carla Broussard convincingly defends the ancient Christian belief rooted in Scripture that the saints care for us, that they're our allies. Order your copy of The Saints Pray for You today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Lots of people have big questions about Catholicism. It needs a big book of answers, and now it's got one. The Big Book of Catholic Answers is filled with helpful replies to more than 250 questions about the faith. Questions about God, salvation history, the Creed, the Bible, the list goes on and on. Order your copy of the Big Book of Catholic Answers today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers Monthly Giving Club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Tad Pacholczyk, our guest. And it may be, in fact, be that it's a hard truth that we're speaking about this hour, but it's a hard truth that we have every obligation not to ignore. It's very easy, I think, to just go, oh, well, and shrug the shoulders. But we have been called as Catholics to express moral clarity, especially when the lives and the rights of children, of families are being infringed, and in vitro fertilization is not moral. If you'd like to discuss that, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. I was saying to Father before, you watch the news shows and they have the panel where everybody argues about everything, and then they get to in vitro fertilization and everybody's best friends. They're all like, oh, of course we want. And there's just very few voices in the public sphere who are willing to say what, quite frankly, needs to be said about in vitro fertilization. I'm sure Father remembers the struggles maybe 25 years ago over embryonic stem cell research, and it often felt the same way, that there were a few Catholic voices and a few others, but we weren't wrong then, and the church is not wrong now. And so we, as Catholics, we need to take this quite seriously. 888-318-7884 is the number. Robert, thank you for waiting. Go ahead with your question for Father Tad Pacholczyk.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, Robert.
Nice to greet you. I wanted to add to the conversation. Have you guys heard of CRISPR technology?
Yes, we have. Father knows a good deal about it, but I have heard of it. Yes.
Well, it is known that lately they have been experimenting with this with this technology, which mutates the human genome to acquire a human immune to the dangerous diseases and to live longer. So basically, what they can do, they can manipulate they can manipulate the genes to have the final product as a human being. If they want him 10 feet tall, they can't have him. How strong does he want him to be? And what color of eyes, and so on and so on.
Did you want Father to comment on the morality of the CRISPR technology, Robert?
The morality of it? Yeah, well,
yes.
if we're speaking of morality, I think, of course, it's immoral because it's immoral. It's immoral because it's not according to the godly ways.
All right, Father, what's your? Is Robert right about that?
You know, actually, this is something that requires that you ask a few more questions. What is the CRISPR technology precisely going to be used for? So to give you an example where it could be used and where it has been used already in a manner that is entirely acceptable would be, for example, if you had a child with sickle cell anemia. So this is the situation where your red blood cells are no longer round when they're produced. They are instead sickle-shaped, and it causes all kinds of problems. They get stuck in your capillaries as they flow around in your body and cause tissue damage. So if you could pull out a child's stem cells from their bone marrow, use CRISPR to correct the gene defect, put the blood-producing cells back into the body of the child, and the child now produces round blood cells. This is an example of a very valid and really wonderful use for CRISPR. So it's not true that CRISPR is always immoral. However, I think the point of Robert, you know, he's aware that there's the possibility for misusing it, and that's absolutely true. And one of the venues where it is most likely to be misused is precisely what we're talking about on today's show, namely applying CRISPR technology to manipulate human embryos in ways that you alter their characteristics fundamentally, and perhaps even add traits that are not really human traits even. There's the possibility of introducing genes from other animals or other sources into humans this way. Because what CRISPR is, it's a technology that cuts DNA and allows you to rearrange some of the genes, introducing genes, fixing genes, but also changing genes in very, very specific ways. So this is like any technology, good uses and bad uses. And we just have to be sure that there's oversight and vigilance, and that the technology is used only for health and healing, and not for the, process of creating a Superman or doing some transhumanist kind of approach to, altering mankind's genetic patrimony.
Is like, let's say a child was in the embryonic state and had a genetic disease, and I don't know the science of how you find these things out. Is it licit to do surgery, for example, on a child who's still in the embryonic stage in its mother's womb?
It would be if you had a treatment that was low risk and high benefit, and you had a way of getting to the baby in utero and a way of introducing these genetic changes. So, for example, the sickle cell anemia, if you could find that in utero, diagnose it, then yes, that would be allowable, again, assuming sufficiently low risk for the whole procedure. You don't want to induce a miscarriage, for example.
So I guess my underlying curiosity there, the point that is that the church is certainly not saying that you can't use these technologies to help a child or to correct an error or that kind of thing. But in vitro fertilization is not that. It's not simply helping a child who's in distress. it's actually engaging in the act of creation in a way that's unjust on multiple levels.
Exactly. This is an entirely separate technology. It's not a therapy. It's a technology to generate life itself. And that raises really, really foundational questions about the kinds of being that we are. And, what is our proper power and authority in that sphere? Should we be preponderating over the fate of other humans, or does this always involve exploitation of other humans? And the church, is very clear. This involves exploitation at its root.
Anna Maria in North Carolina, listening on AM 540. We're glad you're here. Anna Maria, go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
We're happy to have you, Anna Maria.
My daughter, thank you. My daughter had a debate in class, and it was in and around arguing for and against the act of adopting embryos. And they had to take it from the embryo's perspective versus the, I don't know what type of manipulation has to be done with the woman taking on those embryos, as well as the fact that is it like IVF? And that was what I was trying to determine. Is it a moral good for her to adopt embryos that have already been, not discarded, but they are sort of in limbo, so to speak. And then when it comes to surrogacy, it's sort of the same process. It's not that it's done for a moral good. It's done as a commodity for a couple that wants someone else to have their child. Maybe it's for infertility. Maybe it's because they don't want to have another child that the woman carries on her own. Well, how do you navigate through all of this, and what is the appropriate way to help a child or a high schooler understand how to make a determination on this?
Okay, Anna Maria, great question. One that comes up a lot because the tragedy that we face today, this massive humanitarian tragedy that involves the fact that we have probably, as I think I may have said this earlier, 1.2, 1.3 million embryos in the deep freeze. And so everybody's feeling really bad about that. And they're saying, well, what can we do? They're trapped. Many of them have been abandoned by their families. Is it okay if, me and my husband, me and my wife, we produced a dozen embryos and now we have 7 of them left over? Can we give them to, one of our sisters or to a friend who could implant, gestate, and raise them as if they were their own child? Well, let me just answer that first from the point of view of the church. The most recent document that came out that addressed this was called Dignitas Personae. And if you look in section 19 of that document, it's made very clear that this process of so-called embryo adoption would not be allowable for treatment for infertility. It says that. Now, it only deals with that when it says that you can't do it, that it raises, significant serious moral problems. And then it also says, in other cases where you're not talking about infertility, that there will be similar concerns. So I would read the church's stance on this at this point as being one of, at a minimum, significant caution, serious caution. And it may, in fact, be the case that the church is, moving in the direction of saying, no, this isn't allowable. Now, you've hinted at some of the concerns. For example, isn't this just like a form of surrogacy? We recognize that surrogacy is immoral, where you hire somebody to gestate your embryo because you can't, and then they give you the baby back afterwards for a fee. Well, this is very, very similar. The dynamic appears to be very, very similar. And, a lot of times what's behind the push to do the embryo adoption is this feeling like, wow, this is awful that all these embryos are stuck and we should be able to free them. They don't deserve to be in the deep freeze forever. Well, of course that's true. We shouldn't have put them there in the first place. People should have listened to the church, who's been teaching, since before 1978 on this issue. 1978 was when the first test tube baby was born. And so this is a tragedy. But the other angle here, Anna Maria, that if we were to open the door to this, just think about how this would go. The companies that are already making billions would say to themselves, oh, this is great. Now we have a new category of customers. We can produce even more extra embryos and freeze them. So we always have a stockpile on ice ready to satisfy customer desire, because in this country, the customer is always right. Now, you see the problem there, that we then, by doing embryo adoption, feed into the very cycle of evil that we are supposedly wanting to stop. So what's the real solution in the face of all these embryos? And what is it really that I think the Trump administration should have done instead of promoting IVF the way there looks like they're going to be doing? We should follow the example of Italy and Germany. Those two countries passed legislation that anytime anybody in those countries does IVF, they may not make more than 3 embryos. Only 3 at a time. All 3 must be implanted into the mother. So they don't have any frozen embryos in Italy and Germany to speak of. And, that's an amazing thing when you contrast it with the Wild West of infertility here in the United States, where the number is increasing probably by several thousand every day. That's the kind of industry that we have.
Lots more questions for Father. We're talking about in vitro fertilization. Anna Maria, thank you for that call. I have to take a very quick break. We'll come back and continue the conversation with Father Tad Pacholczyk on Catholic Answers Live.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
In Morse code, the sequence SOS is a distress call. It's been said that it stands for Save Our Souls. Well, right now our world is in big trouble, and we're putting out an SOS call for help. Will you answer that call? St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, has hundreds of teams who share the good news with souls who don't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to get involved.
Catechism in a Year with me, Father Mike Schmitz, is now available right here on Catholic Radio. Encounter God's plan of sheer goodness for us, revealed in Scripture and passed down through the tradition of the Catholic faith as we journey together toward our heavenly home.
Bible in a Year and Catechism in a Year with Father Mike Schmitz, tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Our guest is Father Tad Pacholczyk. The National Catholic Bioethics Center is at the very forefront of using the wisdom of the church, the wisdom of the philosophers and the theologians and the revelation of God, the insights of science to come to the very best understandings of what in this very complex time that we're living in is ethical, what's moral, and what is immoral. And we're talking today about in vitro fertilization, which you must. It does seem to me, and I don't want to have a political conversation, but it does seem to me that at least here in the United States, this is an orphan issue as far as political parties go. It's not like, oh, this party is for it, this party is against it. It seems that it has been orphaned, and so we don't want it to be orphaned. So we're taking it up here. Father Tad Pacholczyk, our guest again. Let's go to Ohio. Ryan is in Ohio. Ryan, thank you for calling. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Thank you. Two questions I'd like to share. One is later in life, we got married, and we wanted children. That was a key part of our marriage. And we tried IVF 2 times, maybe even 3, unsuccessfully. And the worst part of this was we were asked to consider a male donor, not me, when the first time did not work out. So it never did work out. The second time, and it was just me, not a donor, and we did not produce a child. So the first question is how to deal with this. And then second is when we did not have our own natural children, now through the IVF system, we adopted 2 children from birth as foster parents, and they're still our children, blessing their moms who gave birth. So going forward, how do we fix this problem with God, and how do we help future wannabe parents like we were? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing a little bit of your journey with us. And, I think you mentioned one of the things that you found a little troubling when they suggested, well, why not go outside the marriage and use another man's sperm? That really shows and reminds all of us how in vitro fertilization opens up possibilities that none of us really want to see. And there's a wisdom to the way that God set up the human sexual reality as exclusive between 2 spouses. And you don't want third parties, you don't want surrogates. Many other violations have become now commonplace because of this. So, thank you for mentioning that, and mentioning that you even felt that kind of concern during the process. And I mean, your question is a broader one. How can we help couples who are struggling? It's wonderful to hear that you were able to do an adoption. In my family, there are 3 of us who were born, and then my parents later adopted 2 girls from Mexico whose parents had died. So I have, there are 5 of us altogether, 2 adopted sisters. And what a blessing it was for our family. And it sounds like for your family, it was a huge blessing as well. So this is definitely an option, something that infertile couples, if they're not able to resolve the underlying issue and conceive themselves, then they can do an adoption. And they can consider that, if they feel called to it. They're not required to, of course, but it's a very generous act that they're free to do together. And, I think a lot of us have heard of stories where maybe there's an infertile couple, they're really worked up, they're really stressed about the whole process, that they can't get pregnant. They decide to adopt. They go through that process, which unfortunately is sometimes pretty complicated. And then they adopt, and now they relax, and they realize, wow, this is wonderful. We have a child or 2 children of our own who we've adopted, and suddenly they get pregnant. Now that all the stress is over, and it's a wonderful thing how often that happens. I've heard many, many stories like that. So it's a reminder to us also that sometimes God's timing will be different than our own. And we may, go into a marriage kind of full of energy and verve and vigor, wanting to start a family right away, and the Lord may not be on the same page. He may have some delays here, or other steps that we have to go through first. But I do want to mention that you ask about sort of how can we help people in this. I did mention briefly earlier 2 technologies or 2 approaches that look at the underlying causes. One is called NAPRO technology. Another one is called FEMM, and there's a third one called neofertility. And all of these approaches basically take the same tack in trying to identify underlying causes and resolve what the issue is. So if the woman has a blocked fallopian tube, could we do a surgery, open that up? If the man has low sperm count, is he on a blood pressure medicine that's lowering his sperm count, that we could temporarily take him off the blood pressure medicine, improve his sperm count? Many other approaches and techniques to help the couple to achieve a pregnancy. And we should be, getting the word out about this type of an approach to encourage couples that may be experiencing infertility in their marriages.
Ryan, I do think you asked about helping other couples. I think you telling your story today on the air was very helpful, I'm sure, to many people listening. So thank you very much. I'm going to continue on, try to get as many on as I can with Father before we have to go. Lauren is in St. Louis, Missouri. Lauren, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I, too, my husband and I have struggled with infertility, and ironically or not, we actually are currently fostering a baby girl that we're hoping to adopt.
Oh, God
my
bless you,
question
Lauren.
for you relates. Oh, thank you. My question for you relates to the way that the church shares the message of IVF, and I think there's a misconception that it's strictly not allowed, that the church does not have any sympathy for infertile couples. Is there any effort to help people understand a little bit more of the why behind the disallowment of infertility versus just thinking that it's a discipline that couples can explore and that there are no options?
Yeah, Lauren, I mean, you're asking about resources to help couples sort of grasp the deeper issues. And I mean, I want to mention in passing, I've put together myself a video that is an hour and a half long. It's on YouTube, and it's called Why Is IVF Wrong? Very simple title. And I've put another video that's about an hour long called The Struggle of Infertility. So when you encounter people who really are interested in getting at the rationale behind the church's thinking, I'd encourage them to sit down, grab some popcorn, and watch these YouTube videos. We had, when we put this video together, we had a woman who, she and her husband struggled with infertility. She gives some moving and powerful testimony about her and her husband's journey. So those kinds of resources, I think, are very useful. We'll mention, I think, at the end of the broadcast that our website, the National Catholic Bioethics Center, and my own website, fathertad.com, there's a number of resources specifically on in vitro fertilization, and those can be very helpful. I write a short column of 800 words where I've dealt with this from many, many different angles, and people should, feel free to use those columns and share them widely. So I think, those types of resources are important for us as Catholics to be acquainted with, and you can also, of course, look at the documents themselves from the church. Those sometimes require a little more of a deep dive. They're not short necessarily, but again, very, very beautifully written, very clear and helpful in terms of getting at the key issues behind the objections to IVF.
Thank you so much for the question, Lauren. How long have you had it's a little baby or a child that you have that you're fostering?
A baby girl. We've had her for about 4.5 months.
Oh, how beautiful! I thank you for that, because whether people are experiencing trouble with fertility or not, we again and again and again we are reminded there are children in need of foster care. And if you are a person that can open your heart like Lauren and her husband did to children who need foster care, please consider doing that. It's a wonderful contribution that Catholic couples can make. Father, I got about 30 seconds with you before I've got to go. We've been talking about IVF. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. One more thing, Cy, which would be that I think a lot of times people think the church has something against the baby when they're born this way.
Oh, okay.
And I've heard people say crazy things like, the church won't baptize in vitro babies. That's completely false. That's not true at all. And the child has no guilt in this at all. And, the church wants couples to be supported in their infertility and just not to go down a pathway that they're later going to regret. So, that's why I think there's a great wisdom here for couples who are struggling to sort of put the emotions a little bit to the side and explore the deeper reasons that the church has taught this so authoritatively for so long.
Please check out ncbcenter.org. You can also check out fathertad.com. Father Tad Pacholczyk has been our guest. May we have your blessing before we go, Father.
Yes, may Almighty God bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Tim Staples coming right up after this. It's Ask Me Anything with Tim. Thank you again, Father Tad Paholczyk. Right back with more Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. As promised, Tim Staples this hour, and you can ask him whatever you'd like. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. We're going to take a moment to do a little something different to start this hour as well, and we've been trying to do more of this. There's this wonderful thing is happening that Catholics, both converts to the Catholic faith and people who have been Catholic their whole life, are discovering that they can do, just to put it bluntly, what we do, and often for particular communities, but sometimes just putting it out there for the whole world, explaining and defending the Catholic faith, inviting people into the Catholic Church. And we've got one who's doing a great job right now, and who we're delighted to be associated with. Maybe you've heard of Sips with Sarah, and it's not Sarah like Sister Sarah, but like Father Sarah, Father Junipero Sarah. Adrian from Sips with Sarah, thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for clearing up how to say the name. I often get Sips with Sierra, so I appreciate you saying.
Yes, right. My father is a longtime member of the Sarah Club. They pray for vocations, and he said people always think it's the Sierra Club, but no. Well, we're delighted to have you here. You yourself are a convert to the Catholic faith.
Yes, coming up this Easter will be 1 year since I have been a confirmed Catholic.
Oh, congratulations! God bless you.
All right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that happen, that you came into the Catholic Church?
Well, it's quite a long story with some false starts and some runaround. But in short, I was going to an evangelical church, which is kind of the tradition I grew up in.
Okay.
Fell away, went into atheism, came back to Protestantism. Started to learn about the early church and realized, hey, they have some beliefs that really don't line up with what my church is teaching, particularly about the Eucharist and baptism. And that led me to look into more traditional forms of Christianity. Catholicism was obviously high on that list. And then some family scared me out of it. I was about to join RCIA. Some family scared me out of it. So I thought, okay.
Like with a shotgun? Like what kind of family do you come from? How were they scaring you out of it?
There was some just some strong words. No weapons.
I see. Yeah.
I don't know.
But Catholics are pagans, or Catholics are idol worshippers, or what kind of thing?
Yeah, they worship Mary. Idol worshippers. You won't really be a real Christian. So on and so forth. You'll go to hell. Thankfully, those same family members have now come around a little bit more to Catholicism. Not in the sense that they're going to convert, but in the sense that they're more accepting of it. So I'm very grateful for that.
You don't know.
Hey,
you don't know.
We can hope.
Life is long. You don't know. But you at some point, despite the fear, you turned towards the Catholic Church. What happened?
Yeah. So after spending 2 years in the Lutheran tradition, I just kept feeling this tug towards Catholicism, and a lot of it had to do with some of the work you guys are doing. A ton of it had to do with you guys, actually, especially Tim Staples. I was reading Behold Your Mother at that time.
He got
shortly before.
you.
He got me, and I talked about this. I talked about this recently on another channel, but I read a couple of chapters of that book, and I was like, I don't even need to finish this. Like everything the church says about Mary is probably true. I don't even need to finish this. I'm so convinced because it was just so well reasoned. Whereas before I thought they just made this stuff up. Like they don't know what they're talking about. And then just seeing how well reasoned just the first few chapters were, I was like, oh, this stuff is actually pretty well founded, very well founded in scripture and in the early church. So from there, it was just a matter of time until I became a Catholic.
So tell us about your channel, Sips with Sarah. People can get you on YouTube. You're posting all the time there on YouTube. So tell us about what you do there and how that came about.
Yeah, so I actually, so what I do there is just Catholic apologetics, but I generally just talk about topics that are interesting to me, topics that are commonly misunderstood about Catholicism. And really the way this started was I was actually on TikTok a couple of years before I became a Catholic, and I was actually doing Protestant apologetics on that channel or on that TikTok account. And then I became a Catholic. I took some time off of TikTok because I thought maybe I should just keep my mouth shut if I'm not really sure what I believe at this moment. Came back to TikTok after becoming a Catholic, or soon before I became confirmed. And then I just felt like, this a lot of these topics need to be kind of fleshed out in more detail and in longer form videos. So I brought it over to YouTube and saw pretty quick success with it. So I've been dedicating basically all of my time into it now.
So who's your audience? Is it Catholics or people who are considering the Catholic Church? People who disagree with you or agree with you? What is it?
I get a lot of converts and a lot of people who are currently in OCIA on their way into the church.
Oh, wonderful. And so their path is similar to your path.
Yeah, in fact, just last night I was talking to one of the guys who's a big supporter of the channel, and he had basically the same story as me. Grew up Protestant, became an atheist, came back to the faith, but was not really comfortable with Protestantism because he felt like something was missing there. We have a very similar path. So a lot of the people that I've encountered through the channel have that same story.
So what are you working on now? Like what kind of topics are you working on now?
Oh man, I talk about a lot of different things. I mean, any given week I'll be covering a couple different subjects. Lately I've been getting into the authority of the church, which is one of the main things that attracted me to the Catholic Church at first.
Really?
Because, yeah, I know it puts a lot of people off, especially in an American context, to say, wait, I have to submit. I don't really like that. Right. But for me, it just made sense. I was, at the time I was in a Lutheran church, and I had bounced around a couple of different Lutheran churches because some of them were just not very faithful. Some of them were doing basically open communion, which even Lutheranism just is not cool with. And I just felt like if there was a church authority that could just, say, hey, stop doing that. If you want to continue to be a valid church, that type of authority makes a lot of sense. So just seeing the practical benefits of having a church structure the way that the Catholic Church has really made that a much stronger case to me.
Would you like to be Tim Staples someday? Learn all that he has learned and make a profession out of it?
Say no.
No.
No, you don't want to be Tim.
I could only hope.
But is that something that's of interest to you? Would you like to pursue this as a
yes
professional path?
Yes. In fact, I don't not to make a whole sob story or whatever, but I got laid off of my job recently, which is happening a lot right now, unfortunately, to a lot of people. But because of that, I'm treating this, I'm like, okay, this is my full-time job now. So that's that is the goal.
God bless you.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Now, I have a very important question. Did you finish my book?
No, he said he didn't have to.
I didn't finish
what?
it. I got to be honest.
Yeah, but
you gotta go back.
You need to finish that book. What are you talking about?
No,
it's such a good book.
It's really cool though that you're sharing as you are, because you do hear this side from converts. The authority of the church is really the linchpin for so many folks. I know for me, I can remember, brother, getting to the point where I saw it and it was like, man, it ought to be true if it's not, you know?
Right, yeah.
But I had so many other questions that I just couldn't buy it yet. And so I had to deal then with the individual issues, works and sacraments and Mary and the rest.
Yeah.
Was that similar for you?
Yeah, although for me it was Mary was the first. I guess the Eucharist, baptism, and Mary were the first three things that I came to accept.
Okay.
And then from there, I accepted the church's authority, and I think the last thing that clicked for me was the papacy itself.
Right.
So yeah, that was not the same exact trajectory as you, but it was a domino effect.
Right. Got it.
Tim and I, a lot of gray hair between the two of us. I mean, a lot of, and a lot of product holding it all together. But so you got no gray hairs yet. What works? What do you find works with? I assume that you have a younger audience. I think that's fantastic. They've been through a lot. People your age, you're early 30s, right? So people your age have been through a lot. They've been through the pandemic. They grew up with the war on terror. You were little kids when the World Trade Center, as far as Christianity goes, scandals and upsets and frankly, a kind of the rise of the social media world. All of that is what your generation went through. What do they need to come to Christ and to His church?
Yeah.
Oof, that's a big question. I mean, I think a lot of what people my age are fed up with nowadays is the age of, or the philosophy of relativism that we kind of grew up in, where, you know, everybody's opinion is valid and that's your truth and that this is my truth. And that whole thing. And we've seen how that's resulted in a lot of different strange things happening in society today. But I think a lot of people my age are kind of tired of that, and they're looking for what is something solid I can stand on, what is something solid I can base my life off of, rather than just living in this kind of vacuum of purposelessness and where there's no sense of objective truth. I think people are looking for something that is opposite of what they grew up with, and that's obviously very easily found in the Catholic Church.
Amen.
What a beautiful answer, and what a beautiful work you've undertaken. Adrian, we're really grateful that you took the time with us.
Thank you so much.
And next time you come back, I'll be asking if you finished my book. So
I have to do it now. That's my
right.
homework.
Yes, you do. You do have to finish the book.
I'll write a
It took
report.
him long enough to finish it. Now you should finish it. All right? All right.
All right.
YouTube, Sips with Sarah. If people just go to YouTube and they type in Sips with Sarah and spell it Serra, they'll find you? Is that what will happen?
Yes. Yeah,
All
I've
right.
tried it out. It works.
All right. God bless you, Adrian. Thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll take a very quick break. We'll be right back
right.
with questions for Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
Church Pop takes a fresh and fun look at the news shaping our world, featuring engaging, inspiring, and informative Catholic social media content. Find it on Snapchat, Instagram, and on the web at churchpop.com. And you can get Church Pop emailed directly to your inbox. Visit EWTN.com and click subscribe. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I've been here at Catholic Answers more than 8 years now, and one of the things, and I know you will never say this, and you will not like me saying it. How many people have said to me, Tim Staples was absolutely instrumental in me coming into the Catholic Church. It's a beautiful
Praise
a beautiful
God.
testament to the work you've done, Tim.
Yeah, and you hear it everywhere where you go, and of course, and you know this, you hear the same with Trent Horn and Joe Eschmeyer and Jimmy Aiken, Carla Broussard. We've got a team here that is absolutely awesome, and the proof is in the pudding, as they say, right?
Yeah, and it like Adrian, he wants to explain to other people now what was explained to him. And I also think that's a great vindication of the whole people. Yeah. I think there's still people in the church who don't get it that apologetics is important. You have to explain and defend the faith. You can't just go, oh, it explains itself. They'll get it when they want.
In Evangelii Gaudium, section 132, Pope Francis said we need a new apologetic, a new and creative apologetic in this time, especially where so many are losing faith in God. And as Adrian said, the relativism and such, that Pope Benedict XVI, I think, rightly coined the phrase, the dictatorship of relativism, is real. And the fruits of this, you do have young people that were raised like Adrian in a context where it's militantly presented to them, in the context of the classroom, in high schools and in colleges and such. And so, you know, we need more Adrians out there,
right? And there are more and more
Catholic Answers, like organizations. And man, is it happening all over the world!
The number here is 888-318-7884. Whether you're Catholic or not, Christian or not, a believer of any kind or not, you are welcome to call with your questions for Tim Staples, 888-318-7884. I have to say, Laura in North Carolina, watching on YouTube, has been very patient with us, waiting through a lot of the last hour while we tried to work our way through the questions with Father Tad Pacholczyk last hour. Laura, thank you so much for waiting. Go ahead with your question for Tim. Nope, Laura didn't wait, huh? She fell asleep. Laura is taking it. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Laura. I know you're there. Go ahead with your question.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Tim, as I understand it, we've got the natures and we've got the persons when it comes to God. And with Christ, the second person, we have the fully human nature, the fully human, and the full divinity as well.
Yes.
Does this, and this is a two-part question, so does this mean that Jesus Christ has a unique human personality? He's got this personality and not that one. Is that fair to say?
Right. Yeah. I'm glad you didn't say person, but yeah, we can talk about a personality. Certainly, as you know, he is one divine person, but he does have two natures, a divine nature, a fully human nature. And so with that human nature, absolutely, you have a personality. In fact, you have, if you were to talk to Jesus 2,000 years ago, number one, you would see a striking resemblance to his mother because he didn't have a human father, right? He would have had a striking resemblance to his mother, but you would also see Saint Joseph in him because it was Joseph who formed him from the time he was a child, taught him to work with his hands and so forth. And so the personality that you would have seen develop would have been like any other of us. We human beings, we are very much affected most profoundly by our parents. And so Jesus would have as well. That's an awesome thought, and one of the many reasons why God gave particular grace to the Blessed Mother and to St. Joseph. That's the reason why, as you know, we give St. Joseph a unique honor in the Church, which is called protodulia, and of course Mary hyperdulia. Why? Because they were given particular graces by God, among other reasons, because of course Joseph is also the patron saint of the Universal Church. He has all sorts of responsibilities to take care of Mary and Jesus and so forth, but part of that is the formation of the God-man, which is man. That's something you could talk about, Si, for hours.
It's an extraordinary mystery. It really is. Like I always love when people ask a question like Laura asked. So when you say he had a personality, like some people like, I'm a morning person, I'm a night person, I'm a coffee person, I'm a tea person. Like he would have those things.
Sure, he would have had preferences, but the hard thing for us, I think, Laura, is how to imagine perfection. And how that, and this is, again, Si mentioned a mystery. This is a mystery that great minds like St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Albert the Great, St. Augustine have delved into, trying to understand, what did he know and how did he know? And we know a lot about what he knew, but ultimately it is a mystery. Mm-hmm. We don't have the full answer. Why? Because, and forgive us for going on here, Laura, but as 1 Corinthians 13:12 says, now we see through a glass darkly.
Yeah.
And so, we have a lot that we do know about what Jesus knew. But the one thing we don't want to fall prey to is to indicate any kind of lack in Jesus, that is an imperfection, because he was, in fact, uniquely perfect. Even in a different sense than the Blessed Mother, because, of course, with the Blessed Mother, though she was without sin, she didn't have the beatific vision from the moment of her conception like Jesus did. She could not say that she only does that which is the absolute best in pleasing God. She can't say that. She didn't sin, But only Jesus could say it. You've heard me say this, Si.
I love this.
John chapter 5, verse 19. The Son of Man can do nothing on his own, but only that which he sees the Father do. So every word he spoke was the will of God, absolutely. And no other human that has ever walked the planet can say that. But at any rate, does that help at all, Laura?
That absolutely helps lay the groundwork. May I ask part two of the question?
Sure.
So, and I apologize because this to me sounds really silly, and it's going to sound silly to other people too. Therefore, since Jesus has a unique personality, these things, not other things, and so forth, preferences and so forth, is it possible that when we meet him in heaven, when we are with him in heaven, that while we love him above all things, we may still find that we like other people more than him?
That's not a silly question. I think that's a great question.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent question. But the answer is no. Because of the fact that we will have the beatific vision. If you and I endure till the end and we are saved, our wills will be fixed on the absolute truth of God and the absolute goodness of God. And we will, that's, when you talk about the beatific vision, what is that? It's not that we're going to, when we say we will see him face to face, as I mentioned before, 1 Corinthians 13:12, Revelation 22:4, Matthew 5:8, lots of texts. Even in the Old Testament there, you have, what is that? Job 19, where Job says, I know that one day from my flesh I will see God, right? That's a powerful text there. But, the beatific vision is not with eyeballs, right? We won't see God with our eyeballs. We will comprehend him with our intellects. See, we will comprehend God as he is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and as he is incarnate in Jesus Christ. We will comprehend that, not fully, because only God can fully comprehend God, but we will comprehend God the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and our incarnate Lord in consonant with the gift of grace that we've been given in this life, along with our cooperation throughout our odyssey, our journey, our pilgrimage to heaven, so that the degree we grow in grace, coupled with the gift, because remember, Jesus gives different gifts to different folks, right? Mary got the biggest gift, the plenitude of grace, and so forth. That's the degree we will comprehend God. But it's in God, and actually the Catechism of the Catholic Church has a wonderful section, and I want to say it's right around 1033 down to like 1042, in that where it's talking about heaven and hell and purgatory and such. But there's a wonderful text there that says that when we get to heaven, we will see, this is incredible. I love talking about this side. We will comprehend not only God face to face, that's the first principle of all of our knowledge, but because we comprehend God, we will also comprehend God's entire plan of salvation, his entire plan of salvation in Christ. So we will see how everything fits together, and we will perfectly give honor to whom honor is due in accordance with that hierarchy of being and the hierarchy of the gift of grace, so that we will give God what is his due. We will give Jesus what is his due. We will give the Blessed Mother. And you know what? We ain't going to get it wrong, right? Because there will be no defects in us any longer. We will see God face to face, and we will see all things in relation to him. So in that sense, it will be impossible for us to place anything or anyone before God, and it would be impossible for us. Now, I know some would say you don't want to use the word impossible. I don't get so persnickety on that, because, it's like the difference between you can't do something or you wouldn't do something, right? Because we're not robots in heaven. So some don't like, any sense of necessity, and I get that. But the bottom line is we will not be able to give Cy Kellett less than what is his due. So if he is deserving of more honor than Tim Staples, we will give him more honor than Tim Staples, because we will know how God's entire plan of salvation worked together and how Cy cooperated with God better than Tim Staples. And it's not like we're going to go, bummer, man.
Aw, man.
No, we will rejoice in each other's gifts. At any rate, there's so much more we could talk about.
Laura, what fun questions. I'm so happy that you hung on. Thank you for doing that. We're going to return with more questions. It's Ask Me Anything with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live. When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Tim Staples is our guest, and a bunch of folks are on the line, so off to the phones we go. Up to Oregon. Linda is listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio up there in Oregon. We're glad you're here, Linda. Go ahead with your question.
Hello.
Hi.
So my question is, how do I evangelize vegans and vegetarians?
Okay.
Christianity.
Yes.
Christianity as a whole, because the Bible is used to justify the eating of animals and animal products.
Sure,
Right.
sure. Yeah, well, Linda, I would first of all say that being a vegan or a vegetarian is not a sin, and it's not contrary to the faith. You have had great Christians and some mystics in the past who have chosen to be vegetarians, have had all sorts of, in fact, we've had folks who live on the Eucharist for a while.
Right,
That's
right.
more than just a vegetarian. How about St. Catherine of Siena and Padre Pio? I love Padre Pio because he lived on the Eucharist and the Lord kept him plump. You know? I mean, Catherine of Siena, you could kind of tell she was living on the Eucharist alone for a time. But at any rate, so it's not that someone needs to be evangelized because they're vegan or vegetarian, because there's nothing technically wrong with being that. Unless, Linda, and maybe this is to your point, you have folks who believe that it's wrong to eat meat. And so they evangelize people and say, you're bad if you eat meat. Then Linda, that's where evangelization, and that's probably what you were getting at. That's where you need to do some evangelizing. And I agree with what you indicated earlier. The Bible is very plain that eating meat is good. And my wife always uses this one. I know she's listening right now, but my wife uses all the time Cornelius from Acts chapter 10, as you probably know, Linda, when St. Peter was sent to preach the gospel to Cornelius, who would be the first Gentile convert brought into the church. Jesus gives a vision to St. Peter of all manner of four-legged creatures, unclean animals coming down out of the sky, and you have this like massive sheet unfolding, and here's all these unclean animals, and the voice of our blessed Lord from heaven saying to Peter, "Kill and eat." And I love Peter's response there, Linda. "Not so, Lord. I have never touched anything unclean." I just love it. Talk about a relationship with Jesus.
I know. Not so,
yes,
Lord.
I'm sorry. If Jesus tells me to kill and eat, I'm looking for a knife.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, okay. But I mean, Peter was on another level, I think, than I am. But yeah, not so, Lord. And the Lord has to give him that vision 3 times before Peter wakes up and understands, yes, you can kill and eat. And of course, the symbolism there is when Jesus says, "Do not call what I have called clean unclean." He's talking about animal meats, yes, like pigs and bottom dwellers, absolutely, but he's also talking about Gentiles. And so, Linda, I do think you can't get away from the fact that, Jesus ate fish, Jesus ate meat, and of course here, Jesus the same Jesus who ate some fish. At least you'd have to be a pescan vegetarian, right?
Yeah.
Is it pesca or pescan or whatever? Because Jesus ate fish, that's for sure. But he also ate lamb, we know, and he ate meats. Although, according to my big fat Greek wedding, I don't know if lamb is meat. He doesn't like meat. That's okay. We'll give him lamb. But at any rate, that's the bottom line, Linda. I think that the key is, with folks who tend to be really strong on this, there tends to be a faulty understanding of the nature of animals, and that's where the real evangelization lies, because you have folks who think, you're committing murder if you eat a cow or something like that. And there you have to evangelize again, Linda, and help them to see that God gave all manner. We can go back to Genesis for this. God gave all manner of creatures to men to be used for clothing and for food. That's God's order of things, right? So that's a good way at least to get the conversation started. Does that make sense, Linda?
Well, except for this last part that you said about, when he gave the animals to Adam and Eve.
Yes.
He actually said, "I give you all the plants to eat," and it wasn't until Noah that he allowed people to eat meat, and
actually,
kind of seems like for their
that's a
bloodlust
little
to satisfy them.
Yeah, that's a little bit off. That is the sort of the common understanding. But actually, if you look at Scripture a little bit closer, you will see, for example, if you look at Cain and Abel, when they offered sacrifices, this was after the fall, you'll notice that Cain, this would be in Genesis chapter 4, as I recall, Cain brings, his sacrifices from his crops because that's what he grew. And Abel brought sacrifices from the animals. And you'll notice that he offers the fatty portions to God, which is an indication. In fact, that's the same language used in the book of Leviticus and throughout the Torah. The fatty portions are given to God, and the meaty portions are to be eaten by the one who's offering the sacrifice. So there's actually indication that it wasn't strict vegetarianism even from the beginning. And St. Thomas Aquinas makes this point, by the way, and he also points out that God gave us these incisors for a reason, right?
Oh, does Aquinas point that out?
He does.
Oh.
And he said that this would have been true before the fall, St. Thomas says, because the fall did not change nature. We have a fall in nature, but there's no substantial change to nature as if, we become we have a different nature. So God actually made us to eat animals as well as the fruit of trees and so forth. So actually that's a little bit off there. You have to go a little bit deeper into sacred scripture to see that, there are reasons for the stories, and sometimes an oversimplification can throw us off a little bit. But again, to get back to the main point, what I think anyone who would even given an honest perusal of sacred scripture, I think you have to see that God gave the animals to us to eat. And so to try to claim some sort of Christian necessitated veganism or vegetarianism is certainly contrary to the Bible. But listen, it's great talking to you, Linda. I hope
Linda.
this has been helpful for you.
Thank you very much. Every line continues full. So off we go to Prescott, Arizona. Isaac in Arizona, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Tim. Isaac, are you there with us?
Hello?
Oh, hi, Isaac. You're on the air with Tim Staples.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yes. Hi, Tim.
Hello.
Yes, I don't know if they've shared the question with you yet, but I shared this so many times, but haven't got on the air yet.
Okay.
But yes, I have a dear coworker of mine, middle-aged woman. She's probably in her late 40s, I think, and or 50s. Sorry if she hears this later. She's a dear coworker of mine, and unfortunately, she had two sons. Unfortunately, she lost her firstborn son in 2020 to a gun accident. He was just 17, and just last August, I remember working with her on a Wednesday night and said goodbye to her, and then the following day I get a text that her second-born, her only son, was in a car accident.
Oh boy,
and
that's pain.
Is very injured. I mean, they had to resuscitate him right there on the spot. He's alive, but he's kind of lame.
Right.
Though he's recovering every day through prayer.
Right.
But I see her, and then sorry, this is where we get to the meat. I'm sorry. I just want context. She's going to mediums.
Oh.
She's going to mediums. She's trying to seek out her firstborn son. She's in the Christian faith, and she's a baptized Greek Orthodox.
Right.
Her kids were. I think they're attending a Bible church now. But I just see the sorrow in her. I don't even know how she could come to work every day. She's a strong woman, but she's seeking out mediums.
Right.
And she said it behind my back, but then she laughed at it, saying, "Oh, I know Isaac would be against it because she knows about my Catholic faith."
So you want some advice?
On the spot?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It sounds like she knows that would be contrary to her Orthodox faith as well, because this is, of course, a violation of the first commandment. You got Deuteronomy 18, 8 through 10. You've got, and of course, the Catechism of the Catholic Church under the first commandment condemns going to mediums and such. And I think the way to go about it is, of course, as always, in the most loving way that we can, understanding the pain that people go through. And often it's the pain that sends people away from God. People struggling to have kids, and they resort to IVF, for example. It's a very common thing that happens, and unfortunately, you have to evangelize and help them to see, you want to do it the way God wants you to do it. And there are easy, quick fixes out there, and and it's so easy in times of pain to resort to that quick fix. My kids and I were watching a special the other night. We were watching Star Trek 6. You're not going to believe, how is he getting on Star Trek 6 here? But we were watching the special features afterward, and one of the commentators was talking about how that when you talk about gratification, if something is immediate gratification, it's not as fulfilling. But it's so tempting.
Oh, yes.
Whether it's sexual sin, whether it's, trying to have a baby, trying to get healing, the same principle can apply. It's so easy to go to the quick fix, the quick gratification. But what you find is there's nothing there. You go after it, and maybe there's an immediate little bit of a help, but you end up falling deeper. Because ultimately, that's what the enemy of our soul, and I know that I don't want to get too involved in this, because basically you need to love this person with everything you've got, but perhaps, that angle, you kind of help her to see that, look, the devil, and that's what you're messing with. When you go with mediums, you're really relying on something other than God to get your answer to prayer. And it will only result in disaster. You may get little quick fixes, a little bit of help here and there, but remember and urge your friend to see. Jesus said He's come that we might have life and have it more abundantly. But what does He say right before that in John 10:10? The thief, that's the devil, comes to kill, to steal, and destroy. Man, don't get outside of God's plan, because once you do that, you walk out and you start going to a medium or whatever it is that you're doing contrary to the will of God, no matter what happens there in the short term, maybe you get a little psychological help or this or that, the enemy of your soul, who is real, wants nothing but your destruction, and he loves it when he can get a Christian to walk out from the protection of God and away from God in order to try to get to God. Isn't that ultimately what Adam did, right? He was trying to get to God without God, and that's what the devil tempted him with, right? Did God say, when you eat this, let me tell you something, right? No, He knows your eyes going to be open. And he lied. He is the father of lies. He lied to Adam and said, no, your eyes are going to be open. You're going to be woo, right? And what happened was death. And death for Adam and death for all of his progeny. So, the bottom line is we have to encourage people to do it God's way and understand that you always win. Now, that doesn't mean, you're immediately going to get the job, the kid's going to be great, and you're going to be healthy and happy. No, because, the way of the cross is real as well. We're called at times to suffer with our Lord. We're called to rejoice in and with our Lord, of course. But the key is, if you follow the Lord, you follow the Lord's way, you will never lose in the end. Because His way is the way of peace. His way is the way of joy that you can't get anywhere else. Does that help at all, brother?
It does help. And just one quick question, because I actually have to go myself. Sadly, I wish I could stay for an hour. I love these dialogues. So what do I tell her of her boy who died? You know, so
okay.
Say, he's with the Lord. He's with the Lord.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And how old was the child again?
17, baptized Orthodox.
Wow. And and that's the hope that we have as Christians. Our hope is in the Lord, and that we will see our loved ones again, at least, in the order of hope, because God is ultimately the judge. But that is where you want to go. Hope. Our hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and His righteousness. Quoting an old Protestant hymn I used to sing as a kid there.
Isaac, I want to, you probably know where Sacred Heart Parish is there in Prescott, Arizona. Carla Broussard is going to be speaking there the night of March 23rd from 6:30 to 8:30, or excuse me, to 6:30 to 8 p.m. He's speaking on the Eucharist. So go catch Carla Broussard at Sacred Heart Parish in Prescott. Got to take a quick break. Right back with more Ask Me Anything with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment. Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, when we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue. Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
EWTN Radio is growing. Are you an experienced radio producer looking for an opportunity to help forward Mother Angelica's mission of evangelization? We need a passionate, multi-skilled, talented professional who can manage all aspects of producing world-class radio programming. You could be the newest member of the EWTN radio family. If this is you or someone you know, email a resume and cover letter, including salary requirements, to ewtn.com/employment.
Catholic Answers Live. Tim Staples, our guest. It's Ask Me Anything. Joel is in California listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Hello, Joel. You got a question for Tim?
Hello.
Oh, he might not be there. All right. Well, sorry, Joel. I was kind of looking forward to that question. Maybe he will call back and ask it. We rarely get questions about dueling, Joel, so I was kind of looking forward to that one. But if you're on your way to a duel, let me just say, don't do it, Joel.
Yeah, you know what? As long as you brought it up, you know, the Catholic Church has explicitly condemned
dueling. Yeah.
Dueling, and of course, it's contrary to the Fifth Commandment.
Right.
On its face, right? So, but Pope Benedict XIV, you know, it's amazing how in the church, what the church has covered over the centuries.
Oh, I know, right, yeah.
It's incredible. But Pope Benedict XIV in Detestabilium, that's Latin for detestable, condemned formally dueling because it was the practice back then. This is 1752. So the church has explicitly condemned dueling by name, but of course it's condemned because it's simply murder. The only time that someone can take the life of another is in the context of self-defense, if it's an individual, or if it's in wartime or police work and so forth, protecting the lives of others, and defending your family and so forth would be including in that. Defending life. Sometimes it becomes necessary to deliver the lethal blow, as the Catechism talks about. This is not what we want, but sometimes it is of necessity. It happens. So I guess I answered that question.
Yes, you did. Next, a question about jousting. What's the church's position on jousting?
There you go.
Actually, I know jousting is also banned by the church.
That's right.
But,
Same principle.
It's so funny because in the modern world, everyone thinks that the main teachings of the church are sexual teachings.
Oh,
but
my
the church,
gosh,
has been trying to stop violence for 2,000 years.
Yes.
Nobody listens, but
Yes.
there's a lot of rules against being violent.
Yeah, and if you just take the time to look at the Ten Commandments, there's just the one, the sixth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other ones, and they entail a whole lot of sins.
What about the 10th? I always took that one to be. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but
coveting. Yes.
Yeah.
So the sixth and the ninth are the two that
the
are
ninth.
sexual.
Yeah, the ninth, right?
10th is coveting your neighbor's stuff. Sorry for my Protestant friends, but yes, the 9th is thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. The 10th is thou shalt not desire your neighbor's stuff. So you're right. 2 out of the 10 have to do with sexuality. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the teachings of the church, just look at the section of the Catechism on the 10 Commandments. It is so rich.
Oh, yes.
Just,
right.
You know what, folks, if you really want to get a sense of things, get a good examination of conscience and go through all the commandments. And number one, you're going to need to go to confession afterward.
That's why I don't do them, Tim.
That's right. Cy Kellett's School of Moral Theology is la 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 la. I don't want to know. I don't want to know
because once you do, you go, wow.
Yes, because there is, and you know, the closer you get to Jesus, the more you want to get closer to
Amen
Jesus.
to that,
right. Anyway,
Shelley in Ottoville, Ohio, watching on YouTube. Shelley, thanks for calling. Go ahead with your question. Hi, Shelley.
Hi, yes. Hi, I am from Northwest Ohio and from a county that has a lot of beautiful Catholic churches and also a lot of cradle Catholics,
Yes.
One would say. And I wanted to get your thoughts and take, Tim, and maybe Cy too, on, how can we teach, and you're talking about apologetics and, knowing the faith, defending the faith, and not just going through the motions. Any advice on setting a parish on fire?
Hey, there you go.
Even maybe even recommendations on a parish mission.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Pope St. John Paul the Great, in his wonderful little book, it's one of his interview books, Crossing the Threshold of Hope. I love that there's a section in there where he talks about as a child. Here, it's actually the question was about hell. And he answers the question about how, by the way, that's a great book. John Paul, he just answers everything in that book. I mean, he answers the toughest questions. But at any rate, on the hell question, he talks about as a child in Poland, the missionary priests that would come in and preach at Lent and scare the hell out of people. Literally, right? Now, he didn't use those terms, but he said they instilled the fear of God in you. And he said, we need that from time to time. We need to hear. So that, absolutely, read some of the homilies of St. John Vianney. Oh, my goodness. I mean, that man preached the gospel. We need that. So I encourage folks, get good speakers to come into your parish, get involved with, bringing in apologetic speakers, maybe even Tim Staples. I hear he's okay.
Yeah, I've seen him light a fire every now and then.
Carlo Broussard and Joe Heschmeyer and Jimmy Aiken and Trent Horn. And yeah, bringing in speakers into a parish. I'm telling you, I've seen it over the last 31 years. Extraordinary things happen. And you can, especially with parish missions, our talks, at least mine are, much more geared toward the spiritual life than, the classic apologetics. I'll mix in both. But what I have found over the years is the conversions, lives change. You hear about it for years and years and years. I'll share just this real quick example. There's a priest out there, he may be listening right now, Father Ken Geraci of the Fathers of Mercy. Well, I first met him about 31 years ago. When I first started in apologetics, I was doing a parish mission to answer your question. And he came with his mother because he had left the church. His mother dragged him there. He had left the church and was attending an evangelical ecclesial community. And his mother begged him to come because she was brokenhearted because he had left the faith. And you know what happened? He fell into, lukewarm Catholic, and then some evangelicals evangelized him, and he ends up leaving the church. Well, he came with a list. He showed me 21 reasons why he's not Catholic. Well, I answered a whole lot of those questions for him. And that was the first step back to the church, and now he's a Catholic priest, let me tell you. And he is a fireball traversing the country preaching missions. So absolutely, we need the fire of the Holy Spirit. Bring in speakers into your parish. It can really shake things up in a good way.
Shelley, if you want some more resources and names and all that, just shoot us an email, radio@catholic.com. I'll get back to radio@catholic.com is the place to write to. But you can hear the music. That means we are done. I am sorry to all those still on the line, but we'll do it again tomorrow. Tim Staples, thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and you too. And we'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.